Welcome back. Today we're going to be speaking about the highly controversial BMW XM. I thought about giving my first feelings, my first gut reaction, but honestly, you know, the only thing I could really say was I wanted to sit with it for a while, absorb it, digest it, try to understand how this has happened. You don't get to the level of an elite company like BMW without knowing where you're going, where you're heading, what your future strategy is. So just to write this off as bad design, foolish design, is a bit naive. So I'm going to expand on my theories of why BMW has done something so confusing and so controversial after I dissect the design. So starting with the front view of this car, which is just as debatable, just as controversial, and just as terrible as any other view on this car. That front end does not make any sense to me. They've actually accentuated it by putting those lighted rings, those lit rings around the edges of the grille. And then they've actually de-emphasized the headlights, making them much more smaller, squintier, which even makes the grille look even bigger than they actually are. When you look at it from head on, count how many lines are going in different directions. And this is going to be a common crit on the rest of the car. Lines that go in completely different directions as if they don't know where to go. Each line has a mind of its own. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. Let's just slowly, or quickly actually, let's move to almost a front three-quarter. The first thing that hits me is that wheel well opening, those lines that describe the opening of the front wheel around it. And there's a reason why this has never been done. The reason why it's never been done is because it makes no sense at all in terms of design. What benefit does putting so many lines around the round object have? None, except to be different. Oh, I'm getting emotional. I don't like it, sorry. It's just angles for angles' sake. This is what we call OTT design, when they don't know where to stop. The other thing that really pees me off from the front is the shape of the headlights. Now, we try as designers to represent the soul of the vehicle with the eyes. Much as we do with people, we represent the sort of character of the person. But these headlights on here almost give you a feeling that you can't be confident about who you're looking at, who you're speaking to. It's kind of like that back alley type of personality. Somebody's looking at you kind of with a mask on or without showing their real intent. So enough said about the front end. Let's move to the side. Side view has to be, for me, probably the most ridiculous side view I've ever seen on a vehicle up to today. And that includes more than 100 years of automotive design. It's got a very, very short front overhang, granted a BMW characteristic, but it's almost cartoonishly short. The overhang from the center of the front wheel to the front of the vehicle on a vehicle of this stature, of this magnitude, of this importance for BMW, a M version, needs to have presence. This car gives me the feeling that it ran into a wall, got smashed, and they left it like that. Maybe it was in the clay stage. Again, not trying to be sarcastic, but this car's front end, overhang as we call it, is much, much too short, in my view, for a car of this size, of this presence. Then as we move back from there, and you start to realize what kind of surfacing is going on the side of this car, the line direction, the flow of the lines, they're all screaming and shouting at the same time for attention. And that is not a good thing in car design because it's easy to add. It's easy to put lines on, to put curves on, but you have to know when to stop. Things like that little black line that goes through the shoulder line just below the belt line, that is almost relying on makeup to make this car look good. And it's even badly applied because, let's face it, this line is a dud. It's dead. It's a parallel black line that means nothing. We move to that rear wheel cutout, much in the same vein as the front wheel cutout, and it's just got angles upon angles. And then we move just slightly behind that On the side view, you look at this rear end behind the rear wheel. They've overloaded it with radical angles, radical surface development. None of it relates to each other. And then it stops all of a sudden. That's the end of the car. And if you try to compare the front of the car to the rear of the car, they might be cousins, but they're pretty far distant cousins, and they don't really resemble each other in any ways. Painful as it might be, I have to address the rear end of this car. The rear end hurts. I mean, it does physically hurt me to look at it. Why do you need two logos on the rear windscreen? One is enough. I know it's in the history of BMW once to have done it this way on their M1, but on this car, it just does not work. It's floating on the black surface, so it doesn't even look like it belongs to the car. It doesn't give it the elegance that you would ask for of the statement of the BMW logo. It's almost like it could have gone anywhere and it just landed there. And again, it's like signing your name twice. Why would you do that? Move to the exhaust pipes or wherever these things are that are on the bottom. I guess they're the exhaust pipes. Then, if you look at that tail light on there, this line is something like, I don't know, a broken snake, something that has gone wrong. It's not really telling you what direction it's going in. It's going on the side, it goes up, then it goes horizontal, then it goes diagonally down, and then it decides to go horizontal again. The line doesn't know pretty much where it's going. It doesn't seem to have been designed with an intent to give you a memorable graphic or rear light signature, as we call it. Proportion-wise, if I just drew a line around the outside of this vehicle and used that as the starting point for a theme, maybe it's not too bad. It's got shoulders that have a greenhouse sitting on top of it that's fairly robust, fairly wide and strong. That's not badly done. If you look down the middle of the car and you balance it left to right, you'll see that it's quite a symmetrically driven type of design. So then why would you not position the logo XM in the middle of the car for this reason when everything is absolutely identifiable as being symmetrical? XM off to the side ruins that symmetrical look. Maybe that's breaking the rules. Maybe that's BMW's approach to this design. We'll put a beauty mark on the car just to give it some interest. Now, it's not all bad. There are actually two things on the XM that I do like. One being the front bonnet, the front hood of this vehicle. It's a mini clamshell, as we call it, something that not a lot of companies do because it's very hard to manage gaps and tolerances, as we call them. I like that feature because it really does clean up the front hood when you're looking at it. It's not nice to see two split lines over the fenders coming down. It kind of cleans it up with a very mono sort of surface that comes over and down. So it does work well for them on this design here. And the other point that I really like is the way they've actually used that black applique or that dark feature that runs along the side, which I don't like in itself, but it is a way to manage the design of the door handles to eliminate that clutter on the side of the vehicle. And they've integrated, it seems, within that black applique, so you don't see them at first instance. And it's a nice way to, like I said, to desensitize or to declutter actually the side of the vehicle itself. Now, the interior on this XM in the front is quite modern. It has that very lounge chair feeling in the front with that leather that's been used, kind of has that used personality to it, something that if you scuff it, it really doesn't matter. Move to the rear and suddenly you're sitting in almost a boudoir. Look at the ceiling, how it's got sort of that, what we call parametric design surfacing to the headliner. You can see those angles. You can see that as you come to the seats, it suddenly changes into a different type of usage of design language, becomes that very traditional sort of plushness of crushed velvet, something very colorful, very alive, very moody. As I've said before in my videos, I have a huge emotional attachment to BMW. Not only have I worked and designed cars for BMW, I've also grown up in the back seat of my mother's BMW 2002 Ti. So with that in mind, I want to give BMW the benefit of doubt and try to understand what BMW's intention is with these new designs. Theory number one. In 1985, Coca-Cola revealed their new formula for Coke, aptly called New Coke. People reacted extremely bad to it. There were pickets, there were protests, there were petitions. Everybody was against the New Coke. And that was reflected by a significant plummet in the stock market for the company. But then fast forward 6 months and Coke releases Coca-Cola Classic.
Well, we read and we listened, and you know the rest.
Which then triples their stock market value. So some people believe this was actually a marketing ploy, which obviously Coca-Cola will always deny, but you can't deny the actual results. And this happened somewhat similar also in the Hollywood blockbuster Sonic the Hedgehog. They released their first trailer, which featured a version of Sonic, which quite honestly was horrific. Fans of the franchise, much like the fans of Coca-Cola, demanded a change. So 3 months later, the film was released with a much nicer version of Sonic the Hedgehog. So in both cases, what you got was an outraged client base that got exactly what they wanted. So is this actually a play by BMW, where the outrage of the emotional investment is turned actually into a financial investment, when BMW eventually turned back into more acceptable design cues? Now, if that isn't the case, I still have an alternative theory. Theory number two is BMW actually the modern martyrs of design. Now, it's no secret that modern design is leading us towards more aggressive surfacing, comically and almost cartoonishly large grills, lines that don't go anywhere, designs with no purpose, and exaggerated proportions. Is it a type of martyrdom that BMW is attempting to take the least desirable design tropes to their logical conclusion and shows us designers that we're not walking down the righteous path of design? As is the 11th commandment, thou shalt not design ugly cars. I sincerely hope it's one of these two ideas, or it's some other clever plan, because if not, BMW have really lost their minds. Now, I have to give this car's design a rating, as I typically do with all the cars I'm reviewing, but to be truthful, BMW has now entered a league of their own. So I think you'll understand and feel the reason that I cannot give this car a number, but rather a letter, and that letter has to be an F for failure. Sorry, but that's my opinion. I'd love to know your opinions. We love conspiracy theories. Tell us why you think BMW is doing this to themselves. The more outrageous, the better. Please let me know what your thoughts are. I look forward to reading them as always. So be sure to subscribe so that you know when the next video is coming out. And I look forward to seeing you in the future.